Welcome to Conversations for the Moving Self. I'm Megan, your host, and a lifelong movement artist and facilitator. Each week, I invite you inside of the honest conversations that I've been having with some incredibly inspiring movement and well-being practitioners all around the globe, as we unpack the beautiful roller coaster it is to pursue a sustainable movement career. Join us as we share and reflect on the moments where movement lights our soul on fire to the moments where we begin to question everything and how we navigate these ups and downs. Hello, welcome to Conversations for the Moving Self. Today it is a solo episode. It is just me, Megan Bader, your host, and I'm super excited to be joining you for this bonus episode of season 2. It's been such a pleasure to be sharing these conversations with you throughout the season of various movement practitioners and well-being practitioners all around the globe, and to really just start to unpack these conversations that I find myself having in day-to-day life as a movement and well-being practitioner who, even now, the dream is to pursue it, and the goal is to pursue this for as long as possible. And so it's really just been such a pleasure to be unpacking questions that I find myself asking, I find my students asking, I find my friends asking, and just kind of debug this idea that there's one way to make a movement career happen and that it has an expiration date. So as we are taking a break between season 2 and season 3 at the moment, and we're preparing lots of amazing, exciting new episodes for you all, I just wanted to jump on here today to chat through some different things from my perspective, give you a little bit more information about me, and just say one more big thank you to all of our guests from season 2. So I'm going to start with answering the question that I ask all of my guests, which is, how are you showing up for your movement and well-being practice today? And actually today it's midday as I'm recording. It's a Tuesday and I'm on a kind of regroup period the next couple days. I've had a lot of people visiting me in town and they've left, and now I have some more coming later this week, which I feel super grateful for. But I'm also in this like admin catch-up phase for the next couple days. With that being said, I also ran a 5K this weekend, and I was a little bit more untrained than I would have liked to have been, but I was super grateful for being able to get in the race. It was one of those situations where I wanted to do it, registration had closed, but then a spot opened up with someone I knew, and so I took someone else's spot, but yes, was a little bit more untrained than I had hoped. And so, yeah, now I'm really excited to train. But honestly, it went super well. I had such a great time. The energy was super nice. And honestly, I'm a little bit competitive. So it was definitely just super cool to be in the ambiance of a race, a run. I did a couple when I was young, but it's been years. So it was really nice to just be back in that space and find myself pushing myself with the other runners around me, find myself thinking about pacing and how to fuel myself for the race. And got me talking with a friend actually afterwards around like the satisfaction of just this concept of needing to set yourself up, needing to train, needing to fuel yourself well with food and drink that will support you in a performance moment like that, as well as the recovery of it. So how I'm showing up for my movement and well-being today. I taught earlier this morning. So before when I went to the studio to teach, I actually was able to get in some studio time for myself, just based on traffic, and that on this day of the week, there's nobody in there typically before me. So actually, I wanted to improv, but then I came in and I was like, actually, I think my body needs a little bit more strategic, exercise-based, physio-based movement. And so I did a little arm workout, did a little TheraBand session with some different exercises, and then just some different gentle warming up to get me into my own body before I taught class. And now, yeah, in terms of my well-being, I think that was actually really important for me today. Like it was definitely a movement practice, but it was also really important for my mind. And that's what I've been noticing recently is I am in a period where the brain is very full. I have a lot of things coming up, a lot of exciting changes coming up, a lot of exciting projects coming up. And all that being said, the brain is at capacity. And so, with that being said, I am really trying to be mindful about how I can incorporate small moments to allow my brain to decompress, whether that's through movement or through journaling or through meditation or whatever. And so, another thing I did today was I took a few minutes. I went outside, I did some breathing, some meditation, and just gave myself time to drink my coffee, not on the go, which was really, really nice to get some vitamin D in my eyeballs uh, and just slow down for a second. So, yeah, so far today is going well, but Tuesdays are also typically a big day for me. I have a lot going on Tuesdays, so I'm trying to pace myself throughout the day as well. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. As we continue to head into the episode, I just wanted to say a big, big thank you to our guest from season 2. We started off with episode 12 with Kevin Kyo, heading into episode 13 with JJ James, episode 14 with Emma Poye, 15 with Megan Castro, 16 with Rose Ada Sao Sao, 17 with Alicia Antonia, 18 with Ricardo Lutgero, 19 with Shelley Kine, 20 with Kelly Lynch, and 21 with Emily Bufford. It was such an incredible season. And honestly, like these conversations have just been so exciting for me to have to really start to bring different movement practitioners in. And I think something that feels really important to me to share is like that there's not one path and that we can all learn so much from each other. And so we've had theater makers, we've had dancers, we've had yoga teachers, we've had wellness coaches, we've had massage therapists, we've had dance educators, we've had so many practitioners and movement practitioners who also then are not just exclusive to one practice. And I think that's also something that feels really important to highlight because I think sometimes there's this conversation of like you have to pick one thing. And don't get me wrong, pursuing one thing very intently and very focused can allow you to gain like excellence and technicality and performance and strength and all the things in that. But I think there's also this value and beauty of being able to understand that practices like dance, for example, are not just informed by maybe the 3 practices that I was first told dance was made up of, ballet is your base. And I am not discrediting ballet. Ballet has given me so much, but that we can really start to see how all of these different movement and well-being practices can all offer something. And so you can use all of those practices to then strengthen your discipline, strengthen your passions, allow you to kind of shape your career and your path as you go. But yeah, just wanted to say a big, big thank you. We have some really exciting guests coming soon in season 3, and also some little bonus gifts and episodes along the way. So stay tuned. Make sure you listen all the way through for all of those details. But as we dive into this episode, something else I wanted to do today was just bring in a few questions that I would typically ask my guests. And this time, just give you all a chance to hear the way that I think about some things as your host of the podcast. So, to dive in, I'm going to start with the question of what did you have to unlearn to keep doing this long term? And this is something that I come back to often, but I think it's really, really important. When I was younger, dance for me started from a very, very young age. But it also quickly became a non-negotiable for me internally from a very, very young age, to the point that I don't even think a lot of people around me realized how serious it was for me internally from the second it started. Like there was never a question for me if this would continue. And I feel so, so lucky to have that relationship with it. Equally, though, that just intensified and intensified. And I ended up having a really dear mentor come into my life when I was in high school and kind of exposing me to this more contemporary side of the dance industry and the performance side of the dance industry and the choreography and the reality that I could pursue this in more disciplines than just teaching. And that was really, really exciting to me. With all that being said, I was in a very, very competitive space growing up, a very like performance based subjective environment. And it taught me endless things, and I wouldn't change anything for it. But equally, it did mean that I built up this really, really intense relationship with dance in a way that eventually became unhealthy. And with that, everything unraveled. I ultimately had gotten to a very, very dark, heavy place. And with that, ended up with a very intense injury that I needed to take off of dance for a full year. And so through prehab and rehab and this distance from dance, number one, it just made me even more confident that this was something that I would do for the rest of my life, even in a period of where I wasn't quote unquote dancing. Like it was ever so present in my life, in my day-to-day life. I was around it all the time. And that was due to incredible people in my life supporting me through that. But then equally, I was super lucky to find my way to yoga at the same time. And that was a nice space for me to kind of still check in with my body, my mind, my emotional state when I didn't have as much um, capacity to train in a dance space in the way that I normally could. Fast forward through after auditioning and getting into university and making the move, I moved all the way to London to study dance. I'd been born and raised on the East Coast in the US, and then moved to London. That was the first time I left home. And ultimately, I was dancing probably 17 minimum hours a week by the time I was going to university. But then went to university, and dance school was 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, all about dance. I was working on the weekends, teaching dance, and yeah, everything became about dance. And all that being said, like I think it very quickly taught me what I had to unlearn in order to keep doing this long term was like, hey, that thing that you thought of the only way to become a successful dancer is to make everything about you dance. That's not going to work. Like you have to find interest in other things and you have to allow yourself to be human in order to keep this sustainable. And that lesson, like I imagine I'm not the only one out there. It was intense and I know what it feels like. And I still find it in myself nowadays, but like, especially when it starts to feel like it's getting pulled away, I get even more like, I latch down on it and I'm like, I am not losing this. But there's something about the simplicities of being able to take a day off, the simplicities of being able to slow down, simplicity of going to hang out with your friends and not worry about it for a few hours. It's okay. Cooking nice meals, like watching TV. I used to feel like I had to use every hour so strategically. And part of that was I didn't want to lose it. Part of that was I didn't know if I was ready to make it. Like I didn't know if I was gonna make it as a dancer. And part of it was also some neurodivergent traits that I've recently gained a lot more understanding of. But ultimately, like I used to think that I had to, while I was watching TV, I had to be doing things for dance. Granted, it's still something that I find useful for me to be moving, to have something to occupy my hands while I'm watching TV because I am a little bit too restless and want to just like run around. The ADHD in me is thriving in that moment, like, let me go. Maybe not thriving, raging. But ultimately, what I had to unlearn and have to return to keep doing this long term is the importance of the human contributing to the dance career. And I think that's a really important key that I'm so grateful to have learned at that point because it made everything since then so much easier and so much actually more rewarding creatively, so much more rewarding emotionally, and feels a lot more easy to breathe. So I just wanted to share a little bit around that. Another thing I would like to zoom in a little bit more on was the injury that I was talking about. It's something that I've gotten requests for throughout the podcast running, and I think it's an important part of the conversation, especially for those younger movers and dancers, athletes, etc. out there. Injury can be a very, very terrifying emotional turmoil in itself. Aside from the physical trauma that your body is dealing with and the actual recovery that needs to happen. But I guess to give you a little bit of insight into my journey and my relationship with injury, I grew up pretty healthy as a kid, you know. I was dancing multiple days a week from a very, very young age for a lot of hours and training in a very regimented competition structure. Competitions were when they were, you needed to be ready. That was how it worked. Injuries came and went throughout the years, but pretty much they were all very mild, very manageable, still deserved to be looked after, but nothing major. And I feel very, very lucky for that, that it took all the way until I was 16 or something quite intense to happen. But essentially, I had gotten injured when I was 16. I tore the labrum in my hip, which is the cartilage ring around your hip socket. And unfortunately, there was a little bit of a blip in the way that this injury definitely was worse because the first time I had tried to get it diagnosed, it was misdiagnosed. Equally, I was young and didn't want to lose dance and didn't listen to my body. And ultimately, it bit me in the butt. It very much came back well, it just never went away, really. It never went away. And it got to the point where I couldn't even sit without pain. I couldn't walk without pain. I couldn't sleep without pain. It was every hour of the day, intense, sharp, deep pain all the way down my leg. And I had weakness, I had instability. It was not good. And I finally went to another doctor, got an MRI. The story was short and sweet. The only choice was surgery at this point. And I had already tried all of the physio, like the prehab physio. I had they supported me through that journey of trying to see if different non-invasive methods would work, different injections, different physios. And ultimately, the conversation came down to that I wanted to pursue this. And if I wanted to pursue this as a career, ultimately, this was needing to be addressed at some point, whether it was now or in a few years. And so, why not get it addressed when I was young, when I had, in my case, very thankfully, insurance to cover it. And it would get me pretty much back on track for auditions for university, which was the main goal for me at this point. I was so distraught. I was broken inside emotionally. I did not understand how I was going to make it through a year without dance. Because the thing is, like, yeah, okay, the recovery actually is not, it could have been much worse, you know? And I really, really am thankful for my body, for my body showing me how powerful it is, for the medical practitioners who supported me in that process, and all of my mentors and family and friends who supported me in that process, because woof, it was a wild ride for me internally. with all that being said, I had no idea how I was going to do it. And I think the most daunting thing was I was in this space that I felt the only way to make it as a dancer was to have every hour. I felt so behind. I felt so aware of the time that I was losing and the time that I was not going to be able to get back. And was I ever going to be able to catch up? How was I even just going to survive my day to day life without something to bring that joy, bring that fight, bring that awareness of my body to me? What I did not know at the time was this same recovery journey I could put all of that energy into, and it would just make me stronger as a dancer. And I learned so, so much in that time away from dance in the best way possible. And ultimately, I actually had a really, really supportive studio that I went to who I was able to do an internship as a business assistant for them. I was able to support at every single competition. I was still choreographing and teaching throughout the year. I just wasn't physically dancing. And once I started coming back into training, another big thing that I will always preach about is the reality and importance of I grew up in a structure that a lot of kids do in many different sports and in many different like whether it's competitive or recreational, there's a lot of times levels in things and there's a huge benefit to that in terms of pushing you and allowing you to grow and allowing you to keep stepping up. Equally, something that I learned in the journey back to dance was how much of the basics I was cheating my way through. I was not perfect at, and like obviously because no one's perfect, but ultimately I think there was so much value in me being able to step back into like the very, very, very basic exercises. And I remember vividly the day that the surgeon told me I could go back to dance, and my physio was like, whoa, 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 he means one plie. Let's slow down. And for my non dancers out there, you might know what a plie is already because it's one of the most common movements in like stereotypical dance world. With that being said, ultimately what it means in French as well is to bend. All my physio wanted me to do was trying to say to me, you have the permission when you are ready to go back to dance, but we need to make sure that you have the muscle strength and the flexibility and the mobility and the support to allow you to step back into dance. So it was a very, very long journey back. But at the same time, I had an incredible team of people around me supporting me, allowing me to train in different classes than I maybe typically would have to allow me to build that strength back up in a smart and sustainable way. And with that, then it also allowed me to unravel all of this built up thing around success, because I think success at the time was so external to me. I was in a structure where success was based on somebody telling me if some external person who I'd never met, a judge, who, let me say, the judges at these dance competitions do have a lot to offer. But I was taking it as if like this was the only answer that would tell me if I was going to be a dancer someday in my career. And was I going to be able to make money off of it? And was I worth it? And it wasn't even just about dance, it was also about me as a human by that point. This injury recovery journey allowed me to understand, number one, what actually was bringing me joy in dance. I learned I'm super actually intrigued and nerdy about the like science of it all, the mechanics, the biomechanics, how to do exercises properly, what muscles to activate, how to use your breath, and equally the emotional and artistic side of it. And then finally, this athletic performance. And so those are just three, but like so many more things that I didn't have, I wasn't giving myself the time to be able to unpack and figure that out before the injury. Flash forward a bit more now, well, let's say a lot more now. It's been many, many years now. And injuries come up, like, and there's definitely a part of me that when I get injured now or any time since then, there's panic. There's physical panic in my body of like, is it going to go back to that? Am I going to have to take that long off again? And there's pain, there's sadness, there's stress, there's frustration, there's guilt, like, how did I let this happen again? And then so far, I've been very lucky that my body has supported me through this journey so far. Other than that, little blips in the road. But when those things come up, to also be able to, I feel like I go through the process of having the panic, the guilt, the frustration, all the things, and then being like, well, you know how to do this now. Like, you gained so much from that last experience, and definitely came back, number one, a stronger dancer physically, but also a stronger dancer emotionally, and more clear on what I wanted from it. So when it starts to get scary, that's what I try to bring forward into any injury situations now. And ultimately understanding that if you don't take care of the human, you can't take care of the dancer. So that was my little tangent on injury within a movement practice and where I stand with it now. Alongside that, I think something else that the older I get, the more I prioritize this. And I wish I would have prioritized it from when I was younger, but that injury did definitely shift things for me in terms of prioritizing recovery and prevention all the time. Kind of going back to what I was saying around how I'm showing up for my movement and well-being practice today, actually, even that was partly for me prevention. Like, I used to not understand. Granted, I was young and I don't know if I ever had the reason to see the value in that information, but I did not understand the value in giving myself time to do prehab exercises, to do prevention exercises, to strengthen my muscles outside of this like strength for aesthetic or strength for competitiveness, but also like, what does the actual strength and stability of the joint and the muscles around it look like? And is it prepared to take the load that you're asking to put on it? And so with that, I think that's something that now I try to really keep as a through line throughout my practice. When there's been a really intense period, what am I doing? Am I rolling out with a foam roller? Am I drinking extra water and electrolytes? If I had a really, really sweaty, hot day, especially where I'm living now, it's super hot. And if I have a really intense dance day, I need to hydrate more than I would in another situation. Am I using massage techniques? Am I going to see a medical practitioner? Maybe it's for a massage. Maybe I go to a physio. Is it having a rest day? And is it taking a minute away from dance? But ultimately, like, what are all of these things? And how am I cross training? Kind of understanding that, like, zooming out, I think the shift that also came with that injury was the shift to understanding it's not just about dance moves, it's also about everything else behind the scenes. And if you don't care for all of it, at some point it's going to break and crumble. And ultimately, at some point, something's going to break and crumble anyway. But the more we can try and consider the holistic human, the more we can support them in a movement space, in a performance space, in a dance space. So, I guess what I would love to ask you all as listeners is if any questions came up for you, if you would like to hear from anybody around. I would love to bring on potentially a sports psychologist or a sports therapist, or to essentially give you the resources that you feel can support you in your movement practice and making it sustainable. So I would love to know what questions came up for you, what experiences maybe resonated, and what you would what you need. What can we bring you on these episodes to support you in caring for your holistic human as you enter into your movement practitioner space? Thank you so, so much for listening. I would like to pause there We're heading into season 3. Stay tuned. We cannot wait to share these episodes with you. We're just continuing to bring more and more practitioners. And the more you listen, the more you follow, like, comment, subscribe, the better we can support you in bringing you these conversations, and the more we can access more depth, more resources, and ultimately continuing to share love for these movement practices for as long as possible. So thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for season 3. Bisous. Thank you for listening to this episode of Conversations for the Moving Self. It is such a pleasure to have you here, and a big, big thank you to all of these amazing guests. It really has been such a special journey to see this project unfold and to be able to share these really incredible conversations with wise and extremely experienced movement practitioners from all around the world. This is a self-funded passion project, and I really, really appreciate any support you can share, whether that's a follow, a like, a comment on an episode that you really enjoyed, or if you can share it with anybody, that's also super, super helpful. Please stay tuned for the next episode, and we'll be in touch soon. Sending lots of love from CMS.